Satya, if you're listening, Clippy is more popular than you think.
Yeah, it's huge.
Exactly.
It's
Our
huge.
entire user base
If
would be
they
all
would have just
about
came
it.
out and said, "Hey guys, it's Clippy, but with AI," people would have been like,
Yeah,
"Here's my credit card."
Welcome to the show, where air takes the floor. Leah Rich on the mic.
Welcome to the AI Guys podcast, where we make artificial intelligence easy to understand for everyone. I'm your host, Lee Dixon, and as always, I'm joined by the biggest bully in your AOL chat room, Rich Swire.
That's right. I'm still there though.
Still going strong. That door closes from AIM or whatever, and
I'm never gonna get rid of my AOL.com email. Never.
that is your Purple Heart, right?
I bet you I could sell my AOL.com email for like an immense amount of money.
I don't think anyone's buying Swy Guy 420 Blaze It at AOL.com, but who knows?
Well, it's for sale if anybody's listening.
Yeah. Well, I know one person that's not going to be buying it. It is our guest today. He's got over a decade of tech solutions experience servicing a wide range of companies from SMBs to the global giants such as Chevron, Disney, and Costco. Currently the Microsoft Alliance executive at Nerdio, leading cloud virtualization and migration with the Azure ecosystem. Watch out for his volleyball spike in your co-ed rec league. Mike Rigo, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know about the volleyball spike anymore. That's significantly less ups in my 30s.
Yeah.
Relying on height.
My goal with every guest, or even for Rich, is never for anyone to know what I'm going to do on an intro. So I was thinking, since I've known you for so long, I'm like, all right, I got to pull something something deep out of the bag that someone from Nerdio is going to listen and be like, you play volleyball? And you're like, in a past life.
Yeah.
It's a deep cut.
Always. It's always deep cuts with me, boys. But today we're going to jump right into it. Mike actually just attended the Microsoft Ignite conference and thought we could go through some key takeaways on the AI side from the conference and maybe where some businesses, both within the Microsoft ecosystem and maybe some others on the fringe, should start to focus their AI attention in 2025. So, Mike, if you want to jump in, give us a little background on you and kind of where, you see AI kind of going, just so we can set the table, and then we'll get into some of the takeaways.
Yeah. I know you and I have talked this before. Obviously, your focus, as we both work in tech, is much more strongly on specifically AI, whereas on ours, we're kind of more in the EUC, space. But at the same time, obviously, AI is kind of permeating every layer, and the EUC space is really provides some of those logical starting points for AI. I mean, we're talking about that specific desktop experience. So that's really where most of my focus has been, and obviously the Microsoft ecosystem is where we live, sleep, eat, breathe. So Ignite was awesome. As always, it's not my first Ignite. Had a ton of fun. Got to meet a lot of people that I rarely get to see in person, and a lot of people that you talk to a lot and never get to see and finally meet in person, which is always exciting. AI was obviously the big focus. Specifically, there's a lot of Copilot, but there was some really cool stuff there that they're sharing. Very optimistic. Tech enthusiasm. AI is the future. Rah rah. And there was some really cool stuff coming out of it. One of the big things I saw, UW School of Medicine is using AI to teach, to identify and build proteins, to be able to replace certain drugs for various, illnesses, things like that are otherwise considered very difficult to treat. AI is like learning how to identify identify molecules and build proteins like in real time, so that they can bond specifically to it, and that has like just absolutely phenomenal, potential ramifications for what's possible. So a lot of excitement around that. And of course, like I said, the big everything had to do with Copilot. What is Copilot doing? How is it improving? How is capabilities, etc. Copilot on every device is still a big focus, for Microsoft, and obviously they kind of own the endpoint, Windows. You know what I mean? What are you running everything on right now? Probably Windows. So they've got a huge leg in the door, in regards to AI innovation.
So maybe it would be helpful for everybody. I mean, I'm sure some people have used it, but like, how would you describe kind of the core use cases for Copilot, and maybe some of the cool things that you saw at the conference? Just so people understand kind of the use case of what AI in that sense is.
Yeah. So I mean, AI. So you guys did a really great kind of differentiation between like AI and software in one of your episodes that I think kind of highlights this. I think a lot of people tend to think of AI as like, oh, well, if I teach, like a specific system and it just replicates that system over and over again, like I'm using AI. It's like, well, no, you're really just using software, you're just using automation. So Copilot is really like, honestly, one of the most like perfect kind of gold standards for what AI really is, right? It's an agent. It's the ability to create an agent that can actually learn and fulfill tasks for you and interact with you, and not just kind of like repeat a process. So lots of cool things in regards to business apps. The ability, if you have the full Copilot, you can actually create an agent. Then it's got direct plugins, APIs into the entire like Microsoft suite, which of course is huge. I mean, Office is still the gold standard for pretty much everybody. Obviously, there are people out there trying to make, Google Sheets and stuff like that work. I've never been a huge fan. I always get frustrated because maybe they've gotten certain things with the user interface figured out, but there's just a certain like beautiful complexity that I know in the Office program. Like I know how to do this. You know what I mean? So the ability to go in there and better leverage those tools, which is what I think, in my opinion, we'll get to this later when we talk more about it, I think is what AI is supposed to be. It's an enhancement for what you're already able to do, not a replacement for a thing. It's not like, how can I replace something with AI? It's like, how do I take something that I have someone doing and enhance their ability to use it? So, PowerPoint, for example, right? Like, obviously, we're all familiar with it. How many of us are actually creating quality presentations versus just like click, insert text box, bullet? You know what I mean? These just boring, terrible
Star
presentations.
wipe, let's go.
Yeah, and then you made it like add a transition, right? Yeah, like it's like the old like iMovie days. Everyone's a video editor. It's the ability to go in and have it create presentations, spreadsheets, pivot tables, things like that for you. And then the ability to just create resources for you. So the ability to go in and create like an HR SharePoint, bot agent that'll basically say, hey, what's the PTO policy for the company? How much time do I have left? Things like that, and be able to quickly get the answers that you need. These are all things that Copilot is so perfectly suited for, and pretty accessible if you're already using the Microsoft, products in the Microsoft ecosystem, which, let's be real, whether you like it or not, you probably are,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you're
Yeah.
basically saying that, and I'm going to quote you on it, is that Copilot is Clippy on steroids. It's there to do all the job, at this point.
It's the plan is to keep roiding it up. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Microsoft
I love it.
knows that Windows is ultimately, it may be the most boring product. Like, it's not the one you think of. It's like exciting. It's not the one that's like,
Sure.
making big news updates. But everyone has it. If you're not using anything, if you're using one product from Microsoft and only one, it's Windows. So, why should we, let somebody else kind of run away with the innovation? They're really kind of putting everything into the Copilot side of things.
How much did you see regarding some of the more autonomous stuff? I know they originally were touting this idea, and I forgot what they called it, but it was kind of like watching what you were doing on the screen. And then recently, you also had Anthropic come out with like a similar product where it basically is kind of it takes over your screen and does certain tasks. Did they kind of double down on that? I know they were kind of, the first take was like, that's a little too spooky, but I mean, it seems like a pretty cool use case. I was wondering if they kind of showcased some of that at the conference.
So it's at the actual, they had stations set up, lots of stations set up where you could try out certain things, and without a doubt that was something that was in there. I don't believe there was anything in the keynote about it. I think there was a big back off from there. So Anthropic, it's funny much. So I love Anthropic, and I know you guys, I've seen you guys reference Anthropic before on the show. They get the luxury. By most standards, they're still not considered the little guy. But when we consider the ecosystem that they're playing in, they're the little guy. And being a little guy affords you a lot of extra flexibility and things that you can get away with that people don't immediately like reel. I mean, they basically did the same thing that Microsoft was doing. The difference is when Microsoft did it, everyone's like, whoa, big brother, back off, stop watching my stuff. It's like, okay, but like you just signed over all your stuff and let this AI company watch everything you do. So
Right.
I think Microsoft has a much tighter, line to walk in that regard. And no, there wasn't a lot about that. I think their big focus is still it's productivity apps. It's the things that you're familiar with. I think the other thing that Microsoft is aware is a gap that they always have. That's why their partner ecosystem is the way it is. Is they're basically Lego blocks in every sense of the word. Like Microsoft is always like, hey, you can do whatever you want. I'll just dump the Lego bucket out on the floor. And that's intimidating to a lot of people. So there's, even Excel, right, which is to me personally is like one of the most just brilliant pieces of software on the earth ever to exist. I am always blown away at what people can accomplish with it. And even someone like myself who considers himself to be pretty well versed in Excel, like I know enough to know that I am barely scratching the surface of what is possible to do in Excel. So a lot of these tools, like we mentioned the PowerPoint with the star transition, people aren't really using them anywhere near even part of their potential. So I think there's a huge gap there that they're looking for Copilot to fill to help kind of build trust in Microsoft products and be able to feel more confident in using them. Like that's their biggest gap that they can identify to get their users, actually using Copilot is like, hey man, do you feel like you understand Excel? No, I don't actually. Like, cool. Well then hey, we've got Copilot for Excel that can help you build your pivot tables. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does seem like there's like 3 different ways that you can look at these kind of Copilot add-ons that are kind of coming out of these these work environments. One is it's like really advanced help, right? Like if you're in an app, and even if you're a proficient user, as you mentioned, and you have this kind of thing on the side that pops open, and I can actually talk to it like, hey, remind me again how I can coalesce these fields or bring these fields together. So you wouldn't even know that there's a command called coalesce, but then you could just say like, hey, I need to split this up or combine these 2 things. And it go, oh, this is what you need to put in that cell, and it does it for you. So I think support and better using of the products, that's a natural like first step. It seems like Copilot pretty much that's the primary focus of this initial run. And then as you advance, the second phase and use case of the Copilot is, okay, now that you're using the tools, but how do you then take your product, the end product that you created, like a PowerPoint or a document you've created, and how can you then create additional information off that from a point of view perspective, from my own use case? So let's say I want to summarize a PowerPoint. So I find a PowerPoint in SharePoint and I go, hey, I don't want to go through all 50 slides. Just click a button that says, summarize this PowerPoint for me into the 5 key takeaways, right? So I think that part is obviously available and probably doable. And it's one of the powerful things about AI. It's able to like take information, large volumes of information, and condense it down to something that's more palatable, or a small amount of information like a prompt and make it even bigger. So it's like, that's the one thing that I think people are not used to in the day-to-day work. Like that's not something that's natively programmed.
It's a new way to use software, and that's the tough part.
So you don't think that's available. So it might take time. Yeah, it's going to take time for all of us, whether it's Microsoft or OpenAI or whoever. It doesn't really matter. You're still like, none of us really think to ask software to take something small and make it big, or take something big and make it small, because it's something new to us. So did you see anything that was like a really clear use case on how they would do that across a company? So I think one of the challenges that I've seen in most of the businesses that we work with is going from a single user type experience, like somebody who's on ChatGPT or somebody who's on Copilot typing in something for their specific use, to organizational, like, okay, now I want to take not just my information, but information from my entire department, and then consolidate that and make it into something more usable that can actually, where do you think they are in that? Is it early days? Did they show some things that were pretty cool case study wise, or what's your head?
I mean, right now in practical application, yeah, like, so that's really the HR SharePoint, right? The ability to absorb a company's entire like HR policy, PTO, benefits, and obviously we've all attended, open enrollments and various other like Q&A sessions. We're like, hey, ask about our benefits, ask about whatever. But the ability to kind of give that access, an employee access, or an AI rather, access to your policy internally and everything available, and then be able to like hand that off to to an AI and have regular people just kind of say, rather than like trying to ask HR or like send an email away, just, pop up a little chatbot and say like, hey, look, like what does my current coverage get me with whatever else? How do I find a doctor in my area? And be able to just kind of like give you those resources rapid fire. That's huge. Those are also like very intimidating conversations to enter into with leadership and other people. Like no one's thrilled about going into HR to ask for anything or be asked to go to
Sure.
HR for anything. Like that's a very intimidating process, I think, for a lot of people. You're worried about how things are perceived, et cetera. But, people are just fine going in and kind of like ask the bot, like, hey, what does the company cover in the event that blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Hey, my wife is pregnant. How much, time do I get as, a dad, blah, 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 blah.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, those are things that I think we can take something that is otherwise kind of large, intimidating, and make that like a quick and simple exchange. That doesn't have to be an email chain back and forth that I have to file in Outlook.
It sounds like there's probably going to be a tremendous amount of potential for integrators, system integrators, consultants, even to some degree developers that are in that ecosystem to help companies achieve that, because it's not as simple. I mean, I'm sure they showcased something that was very magical, but at the same time, there's a lot of work to make that correct, because you still have to worry about like, okay, I have all these policies, but what are the latest policies? And then there's privacy issues, and I got to segment those things, and then I got to train the AI so it doesn't answer it wrong, because then I have to go answer. So like with anything in this world, right? There's this like implementation and integration, because everybody's unique and everybody's different. Everybody has a different install, and so yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, if anything, I mean, was that kind of also kind of part of the ether of the conference? Was like, were developers and integrators and people like yourself, partners, kind of seeing like AI kind of growing this new like requirement of expertise? Whereas before you would go in and you're like, I just need to know how to install and implement software, is now like the objective. I have to also do that. And I also have to understand this new ether that is actually permeates, not just, it's not like a new product, like, oh, hey guys, we just came out with PowerPoint, learn it, right? It's more like, okay, AI is actually touching all of these things. Like, is this now becoming kind of strategic for your company in the sense of like, okay, we actually now need to, everybody needs to understand how AI works, where the pitfalls are, where the benefits is, where to focus, where the reality versus perception. Like, is that something that's now become part of your internal?
The last part of it, not as much as it should be. So, I mean, Microsoft is, I say this all the time, Microsoft is a partner ecosystem and a security company in a trench coat. Microsoft's number one goal with everything is, I have to be able to run everything, because they don't have the luxury of like a Mac laptop where they can just casually be like, oh, we don't support that. People are like, oh, well, Apple, like we expect Microsoft to run everything at all times, and we expect it to be as secure as possible, because again, like the world's business is running in Windows and the Microsoft ecosystem. So those are really the two things that they are always just constantly trying to grow on. And those are two very big things, because obviously they touch every part of every tech ecosystem. Beyond that, it's a partner ecosystem. So they are relying on partners like ourselves, for example, in EUC, to come and take all of those pieces and tools that Microsoft has provided, and then build on top of that and polish and refine, et cetera, to actually like deliver and do the innovation, right? So that's where they're trying to get their agility from. It's impossible for a company that's hundreds of thousands of employees to be agile. So they're kind of leaning into that partner ecosystem for agility. And there's a lot of really talented partners out there that are doing exactly these things. And of course, a lot of them are also back-ended by things like Azure. You know what I mean? For exactly that reason. So yes, on that front, that's absolutely something that the partner ecosystem is thriving to kind of fill that gap. As to whether or not people are asking the right questions, training up on AI, I mean, it's a little bit of a tangential here. We'll kind of go a different direction with it, but no, I don't think that most people, especially consumers, not like consumers and kind of lower level employees, are really truly thinking about AI the right way. I don't think that they're asking the right questions. Not just how do I use AI, but how is AI used on me? As a consumer, as an employee, how can I use AI at work? How can I avoid being made redundant? by AI, right? Like, what are the things that ultimately my job calls me to do, and what of those things can be done by AI? Those are all things that I think more people should try and be aware of as best as possible.
Yeah, even just Copilot, I know within a few of our customers, especially the bigger ones that have got pretty massive installs of Microsoft, and they're on the the Copilot now is like even employees don't even know how to really use that. They're still like, it sounds so simple when you kind of lay it out, but even that is probably going to require a lot of like uptick on, okay, how do I best use this? I know a lot of companies also have a lot of restrictions out the gate on integrating with AI because they're afraid that there's going to be data leakage and security issues. And even though it's within the Microsoft ecosystem or any ecosystem, there is data that you just don't want to put out there.
Or you have someone that's using it and is comfortable using ChatGPT, and so they go, oh, this is the exact same thing. So they take it out of that secure space as we're all talking about, puts it in there, and then goes like, whoops, my bad, I thought this was the same thing. Because they're like, we go back to this education factor is, a lot of these companies, especially the big players, they push it out there and be like, here's all the Lego pieces, please build. And there's like, I don't really know what to build here. So either they don't, or they give it to their friend outside and they're like, can you build something with this for me? And the guy's like, yeah. But that's the issue there is that, without having this, maybe not ongoing education, but initial just exposure to it, especially for certain employees, that's a big key, giving them that ability to kind of feel like they can play in this safe space and not be judged on it. Like you talked about with this HR bot and all this other stuff, AI does augment a lot of that experience into, hey, we're trying to take all of this stuff that's very complicated, HR, tech, whatever, and make it simplified. So now you can rudimentarily use it at any given level. And I think that's something where most of the larger players maybe miss the mark a little bit as far as how they've deployed it. They just kind of assume, oh, everyone's going to know what to do with this. And we're seeing now that there's kind of this massive gap between where power users are and someone that's just getting started.
Yeah. And I mean, in the beginning, to be fair, that was a correct assumption. Because like most people that were actually even doing it were the tech geeks. You know what I mean? Like the average person wasn't even going to try and attend. Like it was the people that like knew that stuff. And now we've hit that curve where the average person has to be able to start interacting with it. And I will say with all these like AI assistants and whatnot for these various apps, it's not Clippy. I talked to someone from one of the Copilot, and I asked, the differentiation between, creating a bot that would create a Word document or a PowerPoint for me with information that I give it versus guiding me through it, and whether or not that comes from having an agent or having a full Copilot license. And then I said, oh, okay, so I get it. So an agent is just going to be able to kind of advise me through it, like Clippy. And they were like, no, it's Copilot. And I was like, oh, all right, got it. Understood. Like that's so it's, I will say, not Clippy, heavily asterisk there. Copilot is the word. Clippy is not a joke that is well received.
Clippy's going to be in our thumbnail on YouTube when you come up. It's going to be you just replaced by him. So we're throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I think Lee keeps emailing the CEO insisting that he names it Clippy. He's on this fight of, not because it doesn't.
Clippy,
it's certainly way better than Clippy, but I feel like the Clippy brand is so solid, and it's just like what a great.
It's
in our generation,
throwback.
It was there. Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
it was.
And also, I think people would love to use it. Like they would be less intimidated by it. Like it's like Clippy Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. No, but the marketing team did not agree apparently. But that's hey, it is.
Well,
it is what it is.
They missed their opportunity.
Keep leaving me on red, but hopefully they'll figure it out.
Yeah. Satya, if you're listening, Clippy is more popular than you think.
Yeah, it's huge.
Exactly.
It's
Our
huge.
entire user base.
If they would have just came out and said, "Hey guys, it's Clippy, but with AI," people would have been like,
"Yeah,
here's my credit card."
They would have eaten it up. Yeah, exactly. What I want to do here, what I want to do here is take, obviously we've now looked at this from a macro, and I want to bring it down a little bit more to the micro and where people can actually be applying some of this. So, Mike, a lot of what we've talked about off camera too, just over the years when it's coming to AI is, yes, there's these tech giants that are all going to jump in head first because they know that that's where this tide is getting pulled. But there are a lot of smaller businesses that, not just with Copilot, but any kind of AI offering, are maybe not getting left behind, but are getting pulled out in the undertow and they don't really know how to swim. if you were kind of having some discussions with maybe a bigger company, but just a smaller department in there that doesn't really know what they're doing, or even some of these small businesses, where are some entry level just conversations or even just recommendations you would be giving them on where to get started with AI? Is it coming back to the education? Is it, trying to find something that's just low risk and low damage to them if it doesn't work? Like, where would you be guiding them in those things as more of an agnostic source?
Sure. So, I mean, first, right at the gate, I mean, a quick plug, just because strategically it just makes sense. And we, as a company at Nerdio, we play heavily in this space here. Microsoft has something called E3, E5 licensing, right? There's a couple other letters in front of it depending on the vertical, but E3, E5 licensing is what the vast majority of companies are using to deliver Windows to their employees, right? You're already paying for this. Um, E3, E5 has a ton of additional benefits, including the ability to do an add-on Copilot for $30 a month per user, right? And that is full Copilot. Now, you also have the opportunity to do something called Copilot Studio. It's $200 a month, and that allows the person, the admins for Studio, to be able to create agents. I think it's an unlimited number of agents, but I think it's like 25,000 messages or 75,000 messages, something like that. I forget the exact numbers. So these are things that you're already kind of paying for in the Microsoft ecosystem already, that allow you for very simple and reasonable add-ons to be able to dabble in a pretty space that is pretty heavily guardrailed. You know what I mean? I mean, this is Microsoft. This is not some random company kind of coming in fly by night saying like, "Hey, try this out." This is a chance for even a very small company. I mean, $30 a month per user, you're not going to be giving it to everybody. Think of how much you could improve productivity for, 360 bucks a month, or a year rather. That's a pretty solid overall deal. So I would say explore what Microsoft is doing in that ecosystem and ask the questions, because the bar of entry is pretty low based on the fact that Microsoft is kind of setting the bait there with all the systems you're already using. With that out of the way, I would say the biggest question that most companies should be asking, and I am very passionate about this, is not what you can replace, it's what you can enhance. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is I think a lot of large companies, for example, will pick on them. They can take it. So a lot of large organizations out there, they took a look holistically at it and they said, well, what is my largest cost? What is costing me the most money, whatever else? How do I automate that? How do I make that AI? And they took something, and that's how we get like driving, right? They're like, well, driver is the most common position. I got all these drivers I'm paying for. I don't want to pay for drivers, so just replace it with AI. And now we're fighting this monumental battle uphill. Like less than 10% of people trust self-driving cars, are even interested in self-driving cars. You've got a very small minority of people who are like enthusiastic zealots that like self-driving is the coolest thing ever. And the average person is like, yeah, who cares? I don't know, man. Like there are bigger problems to solve here. Or even like AI art, like you've just got this general ho-hum. Like it was cool for a little while to like very quickly throw things together and, like the Bing image generator or Dolly or whatever. But pretty quickly, the general hype and the general feedback from the population was like, yeah, but I'm not looking to replace, my time that I'm making art. I enjoy making art. That's the part that I enjoy doing. Can you replace my work? So if you look at it holistically as just like, how do I replace? How do I cut? I think you're going to wind up with some very unnatural applications of AI. And you're also going to be fighting a very expensive battle that's ultimately going to just erode trust, from your employees and just public trust in general. But if you're looking at it and you're looking at something like plug for what you guys are doing, right? Like I don't want my sales team sitting here going through lead qualification at the top of the funnel with like just tons and tons of people. I want them navigating real conversations down through, mofu bofu, like down to the actual point where we're closing opportunities.
Yeah.
So if we look at something and say like, hey, how do I enhance what you're able to do? What is the part of your job that makes you the most money? And why are you spending so little time doing it? Oh, because I'm doing these other things that don't really even ultimately directly impact bottom line. Well, then that's what we need to be focusing on. And I think when you shift that focus about what AI can do to that perspective, you wind up getting far more productivity. and not just fighting some cost-cutting exercise battle on a spreadsheet that you feel like is going to somehow magic wand all your problems away.
Well, within an Excel spreadsheet, let's make sure.
With an Excel spreadsheet,
only Excel.
With an agent telling you, "Hey, you can cut." You know, like it's I think
I make sure we got
that
one more in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think everything that we do, and we try to promote this on the pod as well, is today, because it's so early and there's so many unknowns and there's so many known unknowns and there's so much change that's happening, and a lot of these big companies are putting a ton of money in to accelerate this change, so it's only going to get worse. So it's better to focus on the one thing that everybody can kind of agree upon, which is if you start where you can get a very clear return on your investment. Otherwise, just put it in the category of fun, experimental, maybe whatever. But like if you're really thinking of it from a business perspective, and it's going to probably be a combination of AI plus software plus some sort of service, human work to make it happen. But if you are focused on ROI and you can actually clearly show, like, if we do this, we could save X and that will pay for Y, that's obviously for a business, the best place to start, which is where you should always start anytime there's new technology. Because if you get caught in this like fantasy land of like all these cool things that are happening, we talked about this in the last episode around like there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of really like hype filled shows, and I'm not discounting the amazing tech behind it, but does it actually help,
of course,
make money, save money, make you more efficient? Not today, maybe down the road, but start with the basics is what it's easy to kind of start going, oh, I really wish we could do this, and you're like, all right, slow your horses, let's first figure out X, Y, Z that we know that there's a clear problem that AI could potentially solve. And
if it's not making you money or saving you money or time, then it's probably not the solution you want to go for right off the bat.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, I love it. Well, this has been great. I mean, we appreciate getting insight from the Microsoft side. We never really talked about it, but like it sounds like anybody who's on the Microsoft ecosystem should definitely be paying attention to this kind of stuff, figuring out where they could get their employees using more of these tools, and there could be some serious uplift for them.
No, absolutely. And quarterly planning is another thing I want to add. I think every business should do at least one brainstorming session, at least quarterly, to kind of like kick tires, poke around. There are tons of companies out there that will offer free POCs, proof of values, proof of concepts. Microsoft themselves has lots of different funding programs with various partners. If you don't know how to get in at the Microsoft level, get in at the partner level, find a partner that's willing to spend time with you. That's why the ecosystem exists. Get rid of this notion that you got to go direct to vendor all the time. Partners exist for a reason. Talk to them, find out if there's some sort of funding that, Microsoft will often pitch money. If they think there's a chance that you're going to potentially use one of their products and consume, dollars in Azure, things like that, they put up money for programs like that. Talk to partners, find out if you're not dedicating at least some time quarterly to kick around, potential POC ideas and see what they can do. I mean, you're sleeping on it, and it's gonna come back and bite you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Start reaching out to different companies, trying to figure out, like, identify a specific use case. We've always talked about this, right? Don't try to eat the whole elephant. Find something that's going to be a quick win, and then just ping a few people to see if they can help you get there. At least an architecture perspective, and then what you're dealing with. That's a great insight.
Yeah, awesome, guys. Well, obviously, thanks so much for being on, Mike. We're going to have you back. But for everyone else listening, thanks again for joining us on this episode. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, check out our Substack for more of the content, which will be linked in this episode to continue the discussion. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
It takes the flow.